Glasses.
Very nice. What is that?
I got some new glasses. Roger's tripping out just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mom this weekend was wearing some new glasses. So, yeah, kind of.
You visited Mom this weekend?
I did. Yes.
Why are you not wearing your coat of many colors?
I'm more beloved than ever now.
I don't doubt
and this was a surprise visit.
I'm not sure you want to do that.
I will usually warn them. But you know what was funny? They kind of liked it. They were saying, when we weren't expecting you, it was sort of fun. So yes, it was.
Now,
we had a delightful time.
She called me the next day.
She said she never calls you.
She said no, she did. She said Roger showed up unexpectedly this week. Really ticked her off. I mean, she said all the right things to you, but she was not happy about it. She said, "Now, are you still planning to come down Saturday? Or are you going to spring something on us?" And I said, "Well, Saturday is what we're looking at right now, but if we show up earlier or later, you'll know why." So I had a good talk with Mom.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Bruce. Happy birthday to you.
Hey, I turned 57 this week.
57.
You hit that a couple of years ago.
That's in my rearview mirror, definitely.
Yeah, are you 58 or 59 right now?
59.
Oh, holy cow, you're going to 60.
Remember, there's a brother between us, so you got to give
little brother.
Mom a little time to get that one out before you came along.
59. 60. Right. How do you feel about that?
I am 59, pushing 60.
You've been a grandpa since you were 43.
I like this season of life. It's a funny. Well, I say funny because because I've thought about this. I think when I was a kid, the number that sounded old was 60. I think that was sort of 60s.
Still sort of does. I'm just going to throw that out there.
But it's now I just don't care. I mean, I'm enjoying 59. By the grace of God, if I get to 60, I'll enjoy that. And
was 59 everything you thought it would be? Because I'll say this. Here's my
It's
thing.
the most memorable 59 I've had.
Okay. As you've had, it took me a minute there to process that one. 56, which I'm still technically 56 right now.
Yes.
56 has been the year that my body began to fall apart on multiple levels. I mean, seriously, it's ridiculous. I have a knee issue.
Do you want to unpack that for our listeners?
I have a knee issue now, which I've never had knee issues. I get cluster headaches. I've still got fisheye from the last cluster headache. See how it just stays constricted and the eyeballs sunk in the socket a little.
Cluster headaches just sounds like a lot of them.
This whole thing is called Horner's syndrome. Like little Jack Horner had an eye in the corner.
And he put his thumb in his eye. I don't know.
Well, apparently so. So they have no idea what's going on there.
But they have a name for it.
Horner syndrome.
Okay, so at least they have a name for it.
Yep.
So then they do know what's going on. It's Horner syndrome.
Well, it's one of those syndromes that's what they call idiomatic.
Oh,
in other words,
it just means we don't know what it is.
They don't know what it is, what causes it, how to stop it, nothing. Did you know that was a term? I didn't know that until the last 2 months. Idiomatic.
No.
What that means is the doctor really can't find anything wrong with you, but there's clearly something wrong.
And forgive me, but it sounds like
I'm an idiot.
The doctor's an idiot, right? Because they can't figure it out. So we're just idiomatic here.
We're idiomatic on this one.
But they give it a technical term,
Roger,
as if to suggest we do know something about it. We know enough to give it a fancy term.
This is stupid-matic.
This is a clear case of idiomacy.
So think about this, madacy. That's into mad, idiot, all of it. So the etymology of the word idiot, idio means what? Stupid.
Thanks for filling that in.
I don't actually know. Now I want to look that up. But yeah,
so the word idiom.
My hair is thinning finally. It's getting finer. So when I wash it, it feels like there's nothing going on up there, which is just funny to me. So I have eye issues. cluster headaches.
Weren't you saying
Knee
something? Yeah, okay.
issues.
The knee has just been post-COVID. You were saying everything seemed to be worse. That
Yeah.
COVID sort of.
So that day that I woke up and every cell in my body was hurting, I think that affected every cell in my body. So, I mean, literally like the knee thing that flared up a week later and all of that. And I even wonder how much headaches that I had late December could be potentially COVID related, even though I was tested and tested negative. There's been a lot of false negatives, including Marlena's. Marlena got a false negative.
Okay.
Even though she had lost her taste and smell, she had COVID.
Right. That's the one seemed to be sort of surefire.
Right. So all that to say, man, what a bizarre disease this is. There's really no, it's like we've talked about before. It's like every symptom potentially fits it.
Mirrors everything. And now
your left ankle hurts? Yeah, that's a COVID thing.
That's a COVID symptom, right? Yeah. Fingernail sensitivity, COVID, for sure.
Numb lips.
Numb lips.
Fingernails. That was good. Cold sweats. Hot sweats.
Feel like my bladder is going to explode.
Pelvic discomfort. Talk about problems.
Problems, Bob.
So what are we talking about today, Raj?
I don't know. I did think it would be fun. I think
to redo the podcast from last week that we didn't do, that we did, but we didn't record because
none of our devices.
My machine turned off and your machine turned off, and
we have no idea what's even going to happen today. But we touched on a fun thing that I wanted to, was music we listened to growing up. I wondered if people would just find it interesting.
Yeah.
Where we had similar tastes and where.
Yeah. So you guys never get to see or hear the middle brother. We've got to have David on a show. I mean,
right.
Let's face it. It would just be great.
David in the middle.
Well, but David couldn't be in the middle because Roger's in the middle. So what happens is, Bruce is like the far left guy. David would be furthest to the right.
Right. And yes, I often
and Roger would be
fall.
somewhere in the middle.
So theologically, David is going to be more on the just conservative side. And then you're going to be exploring the fringes.
Go ahead and say liberal. You can say it. It's okay.
The fringes of orthodoxy.
That's good. The fringes. You're keeping me in the orthodoxy.
No, you are.
But I'm on the fringes. I like that.
And then I'm just somewhere in the middle. But then that happened, and it happened with our music.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
So David, crazy David, would listen to like the Carpenters in terms of cultural music that he enjoyed.
Yep.
What else was that?
Well,
was that really it? John Denver, maybe?
Well, I think Carpenters are what I think of. Now, that's where we need him to.
He would remember what he.
Right. He would remember. But now you then, on the other hand.
No, let's not talk about me yet. Let's talk about Roger in the middle.
No, we got to get the polls, and then you get the middle, right? So
I was the guy listening to AC/DC and Aerosmith and Foreigner and Cheap Trick.
Right.
Which Roger doesn't even know any of their music.
Well, I know a couple, but so, that didn't do a whole lot. I ended up being sort of that. I could listen to some of that. There might be a little Boston. There might be
Boston.
But then I'm Doobie Brothers in Chicago and Eagles.
Doobie Brothers. That's talking about marijuana, don't you?
I was a huge. Yeah, I loved.
Doobies.
I love the Doobies, yes.
Well, who didn't love the Doobies? Oh, gosh. I still remember that one. Might have been a Saturday Night Live sketch, and they had the Doobie Brothers on the show, and the host said, "Which Doobie you be?" It's funny how certain things just stay with you. Which Doobie you be?
But yeah, so that was, and then I realized I was a radio play guy. I bought a few cassettes.
That's interesting.
But I bought very, very few.
I had 8-track. I had phonograph. Before 8-tracks, I had 8-tracks and I had cassettes.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
You're
a radio guy, which is probably why you were more comfortable listening to Spotify and Pandora and some of those, which I don't.
Okay.
I listen to apps where I play exactly what I want when I want.
Okay.
I want this song right now, but I don't want but that's also why you listen more widely. If I listen more widely to radio play or Spotify it's just giving me I would go, hey, that's a cool song.
Right.
I like that. So I really depend on you for cool. You and Mark Booth on cool new music that I've never heard of.
Music, because you get stuck in your genre.
Oh yeah, I mean Boston comes. I mean I've got certain things that come up in YouTube music. It's like, all right, here's your morning music.
Right.
Here's your afternoon music, which is a little spooky. It not only knows what I listen to, it knows when I listen to it. Here's your evening mix.
There's a lot of that going on. You just all the stuff that's being tracked.
Roger.
Now.
So, I shop at Publix because we've got a Publix ad in our neighborhood, and I've got the Publix app. So they sent me an ad on my email today, and it said, items chosen just for you. It's all for stuff that I bought last week.
Right, exactly.
I'm like, but I bought it last week. I don't actually need it again.
Right.
Y'all need to move the app out a little bit, every 2 weeks or so. I mean, like dishwashing detergent.
Right.
You realize how many dishes that's like 6 months of dishes. I don't need that right now.
And the apps are stalking you. So I looked down at my phone to check something. Yep. And how was Home Depot that I just left 3 minutes earlier? And it's like, can you leave a review? And they know everywhere I am.
They know when you leave. Well, and the other thing is it's like if you're ever looking at cars to buy, but you don't want your wife to know, well, don't let her see your phone. Because all of a sudden, you're looking at Facebook, car ads are just coming. She says, why are so many car ads? I may or may not have been looking at cars. No, it's just wild that it tracks all that stuff and It knows and it sends it to you. And if heaven forbid you gave them an email address, you're going to be inundated.
Yeah.
And then, because Marlene pointed out something new this morning when she got up, brand new, it said, hey, Bruce, are you expecting a UPS package? Because I got a text that said, hey, your UPS package has been rescheduled. Click this link to find the new delivery time. And it said, Bruce.
Right.
In a text. I said, don't click that link.
Right.
Do not click the link.
Yep.
So now you not only have people tracking us legit, but you have people scamming. There's more scams than I've ever seen before. Just constantly people scamming this and that. So what's the lesson in all this?
Well, the easy one is we need God.
That's it. And that's our podcast for today.
No, whereas, yes, we find all kinds of technology leads to all kinds of really cool, fun things. But invariably, we find ways to use technology to exploit and cement our power and so just thinking about how
taking advantage of other people,
right? The one piece of our went south.
Okay.
When I think theologically, we talk about the fall or this point where we chose against God and things spiraled out of control. But I just realized this pervasive seeing things from a negative, where again, believing the worst thing about people, believing the worst about a scenario, and just seeing this constantly now, whether that's, seeing it very much in me, plenty of that in me, but just people judging each other's motives. And wouldn't it be fascinating? It's just fascinating if we judge people's motives and we were always expecting positives.
Always positives.
Right. We were like, I know why you did that. You were wanting to help me out. Yeah. You were wanting to bless somebody else there. You know what? You were late because you were helping an old lady cross the street. I know that's why you were late. But none of us default to the best scenario. At least in my experience, I have to work at. It's just that I just default to.
Why is that?
Something. Well, I think it's one of the things that would lead me to believe to the Bible's narrative about the world, a world in which we are very good. I mean, there's a lot of good.
Sure.
There's noble things we love, we care about, we experience good from people, but that there would be one almost clear example. Something's twisted. Something's wrong. Why the fascination with the National Enquirer or Why the fascination
with Jerry Springer?
Right. Again, why now politically, why do we always seem to go with the negative? Well, I say, well, yes.
So what if we followed Scripture's admonition?
Whoa.
It's a great word there.
Whoa.
To think about
Admonition.
things that are good and just and beautiful. I mean, just think about these things. I wonder if it's the way that we think. So if part of the curse is it's put a negative cast on everything.
Yeah.
Scripture says we need to change that.
Right.
We need to think about things that are good.
Yes.
And beautiful and just. And what if we began to, we've talked about this before, but what if we began to give everybody the benefit of the doubt?
Yes.
I mean, in this room, when I do counseling, I'm always telling people who are, you can tell they're suspicious of their spouse about something. We've all been there. I said, what if you gave her the benefit of the doubt?
Right.
Oh, but I know hang on. What if you just gave her the benefit of the doubt every single time? It would substantively change the nature of your relationship.
Absolutely.
It might even free her up to say, hey, you know what actually happened was I wasn't helping an old lady across the street. I got, was shopping and whatever that is.
Right.
But it creates a place where we can be honest and open. But if there's always this negative cast, we just don't want to even enter into it.
I thought about it this way once. It's better to believe the best about people and be wrong than to believe the worst and be right.
And be right.
Because what you just said, what it does in someone, if you believe the best about, and it sends that message, and then they say, well, did they have the opportunity? You know what? So glad you believe the best, but that wasn't what I did.
I'm actually a terrible person.
But all of us know what it's like when someone believes the worst case scenario.
Isn't that, Roger, think about it. Isn't that one of the worst feelings?
Yes.
To be misjudged.
Yes.
I don't mind it as much if people misjudge on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, what a great talk you did. You must have worked on that thing for weeks.
Right.
Or several hours before the talk. Thank you. Or when they give me credit for an article that you wrote,
right.
Which happens every now and then. Oh, gosh, Bruce, this was so good. Well done.
Wasn't.
Well, all I did was hit share. I didn't do the writing of the article before the share.
And we had that season when we were pastoring together. A couple of seasons we were pastoring together. And occasionally someone would attribute something to me that you said. And I would just wait to see what the response was. If they really loved it, well, I did say it.
Yeah, sure. You went right. Well, you don't want to make them feel bad.
No, you don't want that. You don't want to do that. And I'm very caring that way.
It's
so
the right thing.
Don't make people feel awkward.
So why is it? So why do we quickly gravitate to the negative? But it would be harder for us to correct the positive when it's incorrectly attributed.
Well, this shed some.
It's the human condition, isn't it?
It shed some light to me. It's so simple. What about Papa? It's so simple. But
you
Jesus,
can help me, Dr. Marvin.
It just love people like you want to be loved. I mean, I'm just saying, just love your neighbor. Just love your neighbors yourself. I don't like people to believe the worst. And I've felt a moment when it's just you believed the worst thing, or this, you heard something negative about me from someone and you didn't come and you simply believed it. You without checking in. I remember this happened once in an elder meeting, and someone had come in and, I was talking to this person and they said this thing that you had done, and, it really frustrated me and I wish you hadn't done that. And I did kind of a timeout. Okay. What would help me, what I would feel great about is if you had come into the meeting and said, listen, I heard this. It doesn't sound like you, but I just want to say, at least there's this word out there. What's the story there? But again, that's just starting with believing the best. But I've done talks on this, what we're talking about. I've thought about this many, many times. Yep. And I still realize, I still find myself in everyday scenarios gravitating toward that. So we really have to just work at, I know I don't like it when people do it to me, but I find myself.
And what if we decided, I've said for years, I would love to run a political campaign if I was ever running for some kind of office, where all I did was say positive things across the board, and anything positive about the person that might be running against me. In other words, I would want to take it from the standpoint of, hey, I'm running for office. I'm running for to serve in a capacity. I'm not running against someone.
Right.
But can you imagine how crazy it would get if the media was hammering you with, well, he said this about you, and he said, and then she said that, and I was like, I really appreciate his stand on family values. I think that's important. But what if you just said something positive? I've said for years, I think people would go, that's weird. I'm going to vote for him. Particularly after the hell that we've come through in the last year. In other words, it's not getting better.
Nobody,
people are starting to believe that negative campaigning works. And to a certain degree, at least behaviorally, it seems to be.
Oh.
But it doesn't work at the level of human connection.
No. If you're looking at how politics work, yes, it can be very effective while being destructive at the same time. In other words, if you're actually corrupting your society, you're corrupting the community that you're part of, but you're getting short-term wins. You're getting, if getting votes is the reality is, the tragic reality is, I think we keep doing it because it seems to have it seems to work at some level.
Right. But it seems to me that our moms were right. I say moms in that, not that you and I had different moms, but for all of our listeners that had moms, when our mom said, if you can't say something good, don't say nothing at all, or don't say anything. Mom would never say nothing.
No.
That was Mac Powell, third day.
Yes.
You can't say something good. Don't say nothing at all. But there's so much wisdom in that. And Ephesians 4.
Yeah.
Ephesians 4 don't let anything unwholesome, negative, unhealthy come out of your mouth. Don't let it come out.
Right.
But only that which will, think about this, benefit the listener.
Right.
It'll help them.
Right.
It's beneficial to them in some way. It doesn't just help me because it's cathartic and I'm releasing or I'm venting, or why is it that I want to share juicy gossip about another person? I'm talking about myself. I feel a certain, hey, did you know? Why do we do that?
Right.
But Scripture says, Bruce, don't let anything that's not, it's not just nothing that's bad or evil. This idea of unwholesome is like that covers a lot, but it's just not helpful.
But it's the exact same thing we've been talking about, where why don't we, hey, I want to let you know what this person did. Nobody knew about it, but this person.
Roger, what if we did reverse gossip?
Right. No.
It's called reverse gratitude.
No.
Let me tell you about this person.
You're not going to, right.
You're not going to believe this.
You're not going to believe.
Roger,
you're not going to believe what she did.
As soon as you say that, everyone's going to go, oh, what?
Well, I know.
She mowed her neighbor's yard. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's change the world. Let's change Facebook. I mean, just to start there.
I've got a secret about Nancy Pelosi.
If you want to know.
Right. But you know what she did? She blessed this person. She gave to this. He did this, that. It's, I think part of the recovery, the transformation, the healing from the fall, from when things went south, the curse, whatever term we're giving it, is there's a transformative work that requires we have to take an initiative, and that is believe the best. That is what you were saying. Think about the good things.
I got to write this down.
Pay attention.
This is so good.
Oh, this is going to be a talk for Bruce.
Well,
I'm
no,
sure.
it's part of this whole thing. It is part of a talk I'm doing called Hope for the Workplace.
Okay.
But you're talking about creating an environment. I realize we can create this in the workplace, not just in our family. It's not just in our friends. It's not just on social media. We can create a certain kind of environment in the workplace that fosters gratitude, that fosters appreciation, that
believing the best,
that fosters believing the best. And I'm thinking that's what we need in this it's not just polarized culture now. In my own mind, it's hyper polarized.
Yes.
You're so far left or right. There's just no room for in between.
Let's catch a liberal doing something right. Let's catch a fundamentalist doing something right. Well,
it even goes back to what I felt like God spoke to me years ago when Zach was 16. Bruce, start picking out everything that Zach is doing right and verbalize it. Because I realized as a parent, I was just getting in that thing of I would pick out, because we want the best for our kids, but I would naturally pick out everything he's doing wrong. Don't do that. Don't do that. Put the tools away. Versus, hey, I noticed today that you put some tools in that drawer. Thank you for doing that.
Right.
I noticed you got out of bed this morning and showered. I mean, whatever it is, no matter how small, what if we just began verbalizing everything that anyone is getting right?
And here's what I realized. I've been thinking about this lately. I mean, you have to keep working at that. I don't wake up in the morning thinking that way.
Nope.
It takes work. And I think this is why the Bible repeatedly says, set your mind on, focus on this, think on these things, put on,
think on these things,
put off this, put on. You've got to, because I just realized even in my field of view, I notice things that are wrong. I think at some level, I thought about this, even growing up, even in the church we grew up, for all the wonderful things in the church where we grew up. But I think there was a bit, I think we leaned on the side of listening, when we were listening to people, listening where they were wrong, listening for what they might have be mistaken on, rather than listening for what they might be right about. Well, I don't want to overstate it, but I think there was such a concern about we don't want to drift. We don't want to get off. So we're constantly looking where things may be going south, where we may be. And there's this place for that. But why it felt like that was more central at points of. And I just wonder if this, I expect probably everyone who grew up in a church culture probably had that experience.
Something like it
where, and I realized if you're always, we've talked about this, but I realized if you're always looking for where someone else is wrong, well, you're missing where you could be wrong. And we could have been listening every time we're sitting down here, someone, let's listen for where they're right and I may be wrong. But I just realized that for much of my life, when I've listened to people, I'm listening with an eye to where they might be off, what they might be missing. You know what I'm saying? So
I have to say, I probably listen a little differently than you, just by nature.
Right.
And maybe it's my personality, because I'm always looking to connect with people. So I sort of tend to listen, even to people I know I might disagree on a lot of things.
Right.
I'm actually looking for the place we can connect.
Right.
I find myself looking for, hey, I agree with that, or I appreciate that, or.
Oh, I'm much more that way now.
Okay.
After a lengthy process, what I realize is I think part of growing up,
and I wasn't trying to call out Roger for our listeners.
Some of that.
Yeah.
But I want to be honest, where I want to be fair to our church growing up, the reality is part of what I'm getting at is I think all of us have to work at that. That it's that you have to develop the quality of believing the best. You've got to develop the quality of listening for the best. You've got to develop the
quality of speaking the best.
Speaking the best, naming it.
So if you speak gratitude to people, there's several good things that happen. You feel good about it. I've never expressed gratitude to someone. I was like, gosh, that just felt awful. That felt icky. Right. I probably shouldn't have done that. You just don't think that.
Icky.
But think about what the other person experiences. Because many of us live our lives wondering if anyone notices these things that we're doing or that we're working at or whatever it is. And it's like, for husbands and wives, it's the same thing I tell them with parents and your children. Pick out everything your spouse is doing right and verbalize it. Don't just make a note of it, because I also realize we tend to make these mental notes of what? The bad things. The wrongs.
And 1 Corinthians 13 says love keeps no
mental notes. Right.
Keeps no record of wrongs. But it's countering. This is the beauty of the Bible. Our bent, this broken bent, is we keep a ledger of the wrongs more than we keep a ledger of the rights.
Roger, I am going to name this talk counterintelligence. It's a talk I've never done. I'm working on it right now as we're talking, but it's counterintelligence.
Bruce is developing a talk right in the middle of our podcast.
We're countering gossip. We're countering negativity. We're countering criticism. I'm just thinking you have to think counter. I have to think counter that.
Right.
Because if I naturally, and I do believe I naturally gravitate to that.
Right.
But if I counter it, I'll go, hey, guys, listen to what I heard about Roger this week. Well, human nature, everyone's going to scooch in a little bit.
Yeah.
Roger went to his mom's house and surprised her. That's the kind of son
and
he is.
fixed her dryer.
Did you fix her dryer?
I put a longer cord on it so it wouldn't jiggle and stop working because the plug was too stretched. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. It was really very simple, but they were horrifically impressed.
Well, it's like when it's so funny when I put the backup camera and screen and all that touch screen in Mom's car, and I inadvertently fixed their door, the electric door on that side that hadn't been working for 4 years, and that the dealer said was be over $1,000 to fix. Well, I inadvertently fixed it. I just jammed it open because I had to run lines through there. Well, apparently that's all it needed, because from that point on, you press the button and it opens and closes. Mom and Dad think I'm amazing.
You saved them $1,000 repair.
No, they were just going to go the rest of their life without a door on that side.
Of the...
And I don't blame them, because you realize there was a day where vans only had one door. You didn't get a double door.
Now they have 18.
If you were on the driver's side, you stared at nothingness. You weren't getting out. You were the last person out. It's just the way it worked.
The van now, there are 22 entry points.
There's hatches in the back, and they're all electronic, which, by the way, I'm not crazy about, because that means if everything's electronic, eventually the latches will go away, and then you're going to shoot off a bridge, go underwater, and there's no latch. First, the electrics are out. The electronics are out because they're all wet. So you're pressing the button. You can't get out.
Well, that's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Well, but it does. I had one other thought. Another dimension. This will be great for your talk, apparently.
Counterintelligence. That's what I'm writing.
But in the same way, this negative bent, if you would, I realize I think most of us have to work at the blessings in our life rather than focusing on the losses. I've just realized in talking to people and encountering that even in maybe magnified in this, what we're calling COVID season, whatever phrase is.
Marlene and I are just calling it stupid COVID.
Stupid.
We just say it all the time, stupid COVID. It just makes us feel better about the whole thing, stupid COVID.
So, but I've engaged enough people to realize that we talk about things we're keeping notes of about people, but even life, these are the things that are going wrong. These are the things I'm missing. These are the things I can't do anymore. These are the things that are scaring me. This is where the counterintelligence, God's wisdom, is give thanks.
Yeah.
In everything, give thanks. And giving thanks again.
And Roger, and maybe the thing was not, I'm giving thanks that I just cut my finger off. Maybe the giving thanks in every circumstance is, in spite of the fact that I cut my finger off, I've got 9 other fingers. Fingers. Well, I used to think that some of those verses were, I'm to be, super happy about this terrible thing that's happened. I'm not sure that's the case. But I think part of it is looking for things that I can be happy about. Even what hope is, when I think about even the next realm, no matter how bad things get down here. And sometimes I just think, gosh, this is bad. But then I'll start in my mind thinking about, but the next realm, the new heaven and the new earth, this paradise with God, I get very excited about that. And it gives me hope for now. It's almost like I can endure the thing for now. Even Paul, 2 Corinthians 5 talked about, right now we're living in tents. I love that analogy, right. But I long for this heavenly dwelling. So all of that is, the Bible's full of things that create hope, right. Even though it's hope deferred. That's not hope that I can experience necessarily right now.
I'm sorry. I'm getting a laugh.
Roger got tickled.
No, it's just funny. We're talking about our bent towards negative things. I'm just thinking all the illustrations you're bringing up, a car going off the bridge, cutting off your finger. And I'm thinking, well, Mr. Positivity.
It could happen. Or what if you crashed your car off the bridge, hit the water, and inadvertently cut your finger off at the same time?
It's just that your first thought about counting your blessings was, maybe I should just be thankful I cut my finger off. Well, I guess that's an application, but I was thinking,
Roger's like, why did you cut your finger off to begin with?
I guess I was just starting with the kinds of things people normally thank God for first, which are, thank God I didn't cut my finger off.
Oh, gosh. Well, yes, there's that. I think I was trying to make a point. Have you ever heard of hyperbole? Jesus used it all the time, from what I understand.
My point is
Because Jesus would never exaggerate. We can't say that Jesus exaggerated. We have to say he hyperbolized.
oh,
Is that even a word?
well, it added to the words we've created on this podcast.
I think it is now. I think it is a word now.
But in the same vein, I was just thinking where we naturally can find ourselves, those records we're keeping, those records about people, those records of what's going on, the things. Some of the most contented and happy people that you encounter are people who are counting. They're creating an alternate ledger.
They're reckoning.
They're listing. They're listing all the goods, and you'll look at them and say, "You're blind," or you'll look at that person. Well, you've got diabetes, or you'll look at something that they, and well, that's not what they're focused. Oh, yes, that's a loss. And again, there's this place. Of course, we grieve our losses. Of course, we talk about those. Of course, but this bent in us, if we just track those, that will suck us under. I mean, that will. And so God again calls us to this counter. It seems so many places God's giving us wisdom to counter this bent in us that believes the worst, that keeps track of the losses, that keeps track of where people have failed us, that keeps record of wrongs, that keeps record of losses. And Jesus is repeatedly calling us, the scriptures repeatedly calling us to keep record of different things. And like you're saying, I like name them, speak them. It's why it's important to
appreciation that's never verbalized is an appreciation.
Correct.
It's almost taking advantage of. I'm not going to say I appreciate this, but I really do. I mean, it's nice, it's pleasant, it's helpful for me. But when I verbalize it, it's actual appreciation. That person recognizes, oh, I've been appreciated for this.
Yeah, I think it was Andy Stanley who said, gratitude unexpressed is experienced as ingratitude.
Yes, I saw that talk.
Yes.
That was a great talk.
Yeah. So in other words, when you aren't verbalizing, it's not just enough to keep track, but if you're not verbalizing, if you're not speaking it, if you're not letting people know, then they're not realizing it.
Right. They don't know that you appreciate it. They don't know that you're thankful for them.
And
Gosh, I've got a lot of work to do.
But there's also something in you, because sometimes gratitude unexpressed is, well, there's a not good reason why I'm not expressing
entitlement.
It. Right. Entitlement, independence. I don't want to admit I need you. I don't want to. So I'm not saying thank you because that humbles me a little bit. So it's why not just keeping the record of rights, but naming them, speaking, not just because the other person needs that.
Yes.
But because you need that. You need to.
So I realized as we're talking, even because I was reading out of Luke 6 and 7 this morning, where Jesus talks about, again, loving your enemies. So many, and he talks about this in Matthew and Luke in multiple places. But what I didn't realize, in Luke, he gives the golden rule. So in everything, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, in the context of his teaching about enemies. So he's talking about love your enemies. Don't repay evil for evil. Love your enemies, love your enemies, love your enemies. And he finishes that whole thing about loving your enemies with, so do unto your enemies as you want done to you. And I'm like, oh, that takes it up a notch. It's one thing to say, do for your neighbor. But I thought you did a message years ago that I thought was a great way, because Roger talked about this teaching of Jesus about loving your enemies. And he's like, most of us don't think of ourselves as having enemies.
Right.
He said, so just fill in that blank with people you don't like so much or don't like you.
Right.
And I thought that's super helpful.
Yep.
Because there are people I don't like so much.
Yep.
There are some people that don't like me so much.
Right. Not looking forward to dinner, getting with you anytime soon.
Right. And so Jesus says to them, have dinner with them. Because if you only have dinner with the people you like, he says, what credit does that do? He said, don't pagans and sinners do that?
Yeah.
It's just interesting. I can see him saying that with a smile on his face, by the way, not a frown.
Yeah.
But guys, come on. Guys, we're called to a whole different thing. I want you to do good for your enemies. And I'm like, you talk about counterintelligence.
Well, and all of this speaks then to the fact God doesn't change us overnight. God wants to make us more like him, but he doesn't just do this poof. There's just in other words, it's the long road of little decisions. It's the long road of beginning to believe the best about speaking your thanks more often, catching people doing right.
Yes.
These are all things. In other words, this sin or brokenness, and we're forgiven. So Jesus died on a cross for us, and we're pardoned, but we're still screwy. We still have that negative bent. And now he's working, and he's promising, okay, somewhere down the road, I'm going to finish up the completed process. I'm doing it gradually right now, and I'm doing it, but he doesn't do it without our cooperation. In other words, and Mom and Dad and I talked about this week, and they were kind of having a devotional reading, and this idea of put off this old clothing and you put on this. And I realized this is such a beautiful analogy. God's calling us every day to put on this clothing. We've got to put on forgiveness. We got to put on compassion. We got to put on gratitude. We've got to put on humility. We've got to put on forgiveness. Because there's a part that we play. It's not God says, I'm just going to totally heal you. I'm just going to totally radically, that this ingrained negativity, this ingrained broken bent, this ingrained not to love people like you love yourself. I'm going to keep reforming. I'm going to keep transforming that. I'm going to keep working at that bit by bit, piece by piece, as you cooperate, as you choose to not keep record of wrongs. Anyway.
And, I love everything you just said. I wasn't really hearing you because I was working on something else in my own head. So I'm sure it was very good. I'm glad our listeners got that.
I've never done that before.
I just thought it was one of the most staggering teachings of Jesus.
And I have a new idea.
That's great. That's what causes a lot of problems in marriages. While your spouse is talking to you, you're already working on your counter response.
And then you just blurt it out.
Right? And they're like, did you hear me? I heard you. No, you didn't. You didn't hear anything.
All right, back to the
staggering teaching of Jesus as he finishes this.
That I was deeply
teaching,
concerned to hear.
As he was teaching about loving enemies. The most staggering part of that is, and I just thought about this all the way from my house to the office this morning, which is about 12 minutes, but that's pretty deep thought for me.
Yeah, you missed some lights, I can tell.
I did. So he said, so I want you to be perfect, just like your heavenly Father is perfect, who is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. And I just thought, this is how shallow I am. I'm like, that's staggering. Jesus wants us to be like God, who is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. I even thought about, the political season and my struggle with people on certain political ideologies. And I'm just like, but Jesus says, no, I want you to be like a Heavenly Father. Our Heavenly Father's kind to them.
Yeah.
And he wants us, this is what godliness is. This is where I ended up. Godliness is not checking boxes of certain kinds of behaviors. I went to church and I'm giving and I'm doing it's not piety at a certain level.
Or sins I don't commit.
It's actually being like God.
Right.
No, that's what God isn't doing a record of. I went to church this week and I did.
Right.
And Jesus says, I want you to be like my Father, like your Father. I want you to be like God. And I thought, if Jesus is inviting us into that, it must be possible.
Yes.
Now think about that.
Right.
That means just as it's possible for me to be negative and critical and ungrateful and wicked, Jesus invites me into something else. And I can do it because he's inviting me into it. It's that it's God calling things that aren't as though they are.
Right.
So that was my thought for this morning. Even driving in, I was like, what is godliness? It's not piety and biblical knowledge and all of these other things that are potentially good.
Right.
It's being like God.
Right. And for me, the thought with that is, whereas holiness, another term we think of godliness, is often was a reflection of you didn't do certain kinds of things. I don't think we thought of holiness as gentleness, humility, imitating, being like God, who's set apart. We talk about God being holy.
Yes.
It's not just that God is holy because he doesn't do all these things. God is holy in his mercy. God is holy in his compassion. God is holy in,
and he says, I want you to be holy even as I am holy.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but the thought is, oh, I've got to clean up my act. I've got to stop doing lustful or angry things. I've got to stop doing cheating or stealing kinds of things. We often don't think of godliness or holiness as mercy, compassion, gentleness,
kindness,
humility.
Yeah.
God is humble. This is and so
yes.
when he says even what you're saying there, be perfect like your Father who is kind,
ungrateful, and wicked,
who is sending rain on the
Yep.
just and the unjust,
Yep.
who is generous toward all, so holiness and godliness isn't simply this list of things I don't do, or like the Pharisee might, this list of
I think that
commands
I'm not like
I
that
keep.
person.
It's
the Pharisees' entire prayer that day was in comparison to someone. Right. I mean, this thing about that. Can you imagine? This is a whole nother podcast because we're running out of time. But can you imagine doing a comparative prayer?
right.
It just seems unhelpful.
Well, right. If you're comparing prayer, it should be compared to God, and I fall short.
Which is why the other person said, God,
have
be mercy on me,
right.
A sinner.
Because he was comparing himself to God. That's a good
great
point.
Word.
Yes.
That's good. Well, this has been a great talk. What do they say at the end of those? Good talk.
I just enjoy hanging out, with you and
well, you don't ever hang out with me any other times. I invite you on weekend trips. I invite you to do things with me, and you say no.
No, I don't.
Jesus said no again.
I really don't.
No, I didn't.